All right, welcome to MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE, the podcast that reviews your favorite sci-fi comedy, The Orville. This is Michael, and I'm joined by G.I. Jolie.
Hi. I forgot English for a second.
It's okay, it's been a long day, it's been a long night, right? Long week, long month, long year, long decade. Also joined by Champion.
Hello.
He's had too much upsada.
Yeah. So this, we're actually reviewing the season finale of The Orville Season 1. This is episode 12. Nice even number, right? Usually they go 13, but it evens out because Season 2 is 14 episodes, right? So it all evens out in the end. Even Steven.
Fun bit of trivia before Ian does his thing is that they did have 13 episodes. But Primal Urges was shifted to Season 2.
Which we'll talk about very soon, yes. We are not going to take a break. We're pretty much going to keep plowing through, right? So you'll be hearing that review soon. So yeah, but yeah, Champion, our resident reviewer, our resident summarizer, is going to summarize this episode with his keen long-term memory.
My keen long-term memory. Let me see if I can remember this one.
Okay.
From what I recall, this episode starts when the Orville is exploring some sort of spatial weirdness that they've detected.
Always weirdness.
Uh-huh.
And they send out a shuttle to figure out exactly what's going on. And they pop... Who do they pop in the shuttle? It's Kelly Grayson and
Isaac?
Is it Isaac there too? Anyway, it doesn't matter who else is there. Kelly's there though. And they all have to go back to the ship. But before they do, they run into some locals. They didn't think that there'd be people there, but there's some people there. And they bump into some of them, so they have to run away. But as they're running away, this little girl from the planet, she trips and falls and hits her head. Mm-hmm. And Kelly sees this, and she's upset. Oh no, this little girl, she's got a cut on her head. So she calls the girl over. Hey, it's okay. You can come here. I'm going to fix you. And she takes out her little dermal regenerator and fixes this gash on this little girl's forehead. But as soon as she does so, she turns around and sees a whole bunch of natives looking at her. And she runs away in fear. They go back to the ship. Oh my goodness, Ed, this terrible thing happened. I helped this little girl, but the natives from the planet, they saw me. I'm going to get in trouble. Well, Kelly, Captain says, no, it's no big deal. You got out of there quick enough. Oh, you know what? All right, I'm doing a terrible job of this. Because before this happens, there is a scene where Ed and Kelly are going over the events of the Cupid's Dagger episode. And they're talking about how Rob Lowe is responsible for her infidelity. Yes. And hey, maybe we should go on a date. So they schedule a date, and they're starting to rekindle their feelings. So then this away team thing happens, and then Kelly says this terrible thing happened. Ed says it's no big deal, and this becomes a thing later on. When the planet suddenly disappears, and they have no idea what's happening. Yeah. 11 days later, the planet shows up again, though, and it turns out that the civilization has advanced 700 years in the 11 days that they've been waiting for it. So they go down to find out what the deal is, only to realize that this civilization is now worshipping a god that they named Kelly. And it is a terrible civilization that tortures and kills all of the heretics. And Kelly is horrified by this. And she finds whatever they use for a pope around there. Talks to the pope.
Volundus.
Volundus? Volundus? Is that his name? Or is that his title?
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Religious leader called.
I'm just going to call him the Pope for now.
Yeah.
So she talks to the Pope and says, you shouldn't worship me. I don't deserve your worship. She thinks that that's going to do the trick for some reason. They leave. The Pope talks to his Vice Pope, and they say, well, we have to keep fear in line. So they ignore it. They come back 700 years later, and now it's a 21st century society, and they're talking about whether or not some sort of legislation or whatever this befoul the rules of Kelly or this and that. Anyway, she just realizes that they're in the same position as they were before. Things are getting worse and worse. They end up deciding to leave Issac there.
Well, he volunteers.
He volunteers, yes.
Yeah, he's like, if I stay there, I can fix things. They're like, yeah, but then you're going to stay there for 700 years.
This is after Kelly herself had volunteered to live the rest of her life there and try and put their civilization on a better course. Issac volunteers and stays down on the planet for 700 years. They revisit it again, and they've turned into this ridiculously technological, peaceful civilization. At first, they thank Issac for helping, but they were visited by some citizens of this civilization who say, no, it wasn't Issac. I mean, we were hanging out and it was cool and everything, but this is basically all on us. We got through this on our own, and thanks a lot for everything you've done. Maybe we'll study you at some point. And Kelly says, yeah, I'd be flattered. So they leave, and that's that. Then we wrap up this little Ed Kelly romantic subplot, and Kelly decides, no, we probably shouldn't get back together because the entire reason that this happened is because you didn't tell the Admiral to try and protect me, so we probably shouldn't go out because it's going to compromise your decision. And I think that's that. Yeah,
that's pretty much it. There might be more that comes out as we talk about it, but I'll just say this was one of the better episodes for me. Other than the fact that it was hard to pack in, so much story and maybe a little bit so much plot convenience into a 45-minute episode, I at least appreciate that they tried to deal with this idea. The plot device of the planet jumping ahead 700 years ahead of our time was great. It was a pure science fiction idea, right? Like something you can't do in any other genre. You could argue that the analogy to Christianity was a little bit on the nose. Yeah. But again, ideally this story could have been spread out over several episodes, but I do appreciate that they tried to do it. Maybe the execution wasn't perfect, but overall I did like this one.
It was like a really simple way to wrap up the Ed and Kelly will they won't they mystery.
Right.
And really, because when you think about it, he seemed pretty upset that Kelly was he was going to lose her.
Right.
That she was going to go down to that planet, and she was 700 years would pass, while only 11 passed for him, and he would never see her again. Like, to be honest, I was like, oh my God, how are they going to fix that? Like, Kelly is the only solution. Right. She has to go down there and explain to these people that she's no god. She's just, a human woman traveling in space, exploring space, and that happened to come upon your planet. And it was like just too quick that Issac was like, I'll do it.
Yeah. Even though he can't supposedly sense time the way we do, it would have been nice for there to be some consequence. Like maybe when they meet up with Issac at the end, maybe there's something different about him, or maybe there's an unexpected side effect that they didn't anticipate because it has been 700 years. So it's like there's little tweaks they could have done throughout the whole plot that would have made it a little bit better. Even the fact that Kelly only had one interaction. She caused a girl to fall and then she healed her. That's it. It would have been nice if there was a full episode of her, like, to use the Jesus analogy, performing like a handful of miracles over the course of a week. So that way there would have been enough eyewitnesses and stories to build up around, rather than one girl seeing one thing. It was a little bit far-fetched, right? It was too convenient, I thought. So I think it at least deserved maybe a two-parter. What do you think, Ian?
I think that it would have been a great cliffhanger episode, and it certainly would have given a little bit more opportunity to flesh some of these stories out. Because you're right, there was no real reason for a religion to develop around this one thing. And I was a little disappointed with like the middle of the episode as well, where they end up at the 21st century version of the planet, and she's just watching CNN, and it doesn't really seem as though it's terrible, right? Like they've got a theocracy, but maybe if they had more time, they could have maybe floated some sort of calamity that was happening because of this, like some sort of terrible war that was about to happen, and half the population was about to be wiped out, and it was all in her name. Like that would have given them a reason beyond, this just isn't very good. And at the end of the day, like Isaac goes down and spends 700 years there for nothing because they figure this out on their own, as we learn at the end.
Great point. Yeah.
Right. And this really, like, what are you expecting to do? Like, even when it's the Bronze Age civilization and she's hanging out with the Pope saying, yeah, I'm Kelly, you shouldn't worship me. Well, first of all, are they really going to, like, is that civilization going to take her at her word without hanging her by her wrists and cutting her up and seeing if she is healed, right? Like, that's a little far-fetched. Like, they should have tortured her at least as enthusiastically as they were torturing those the regular people. Mm-hmm. So there's that. I don't know. Like, it certainly did need to be fleshed out. And what else did I have with this episode? Oh, another thing that irritated me is the fact that this romance subplot between Kelly and Ed even happened, especially hot on the heels of New Dimensions, when we got to see Ed act like a man baby for 20 minutes, yelling at Kelly for trying to help him. And like, seriously, is this the moment that she's going to decide, yeah, maybe we'll give it another try? If I was her, that's after all the red flags that he was showing the previous episode, I would have run away.
Yeah. I would have been like, wow, shoot, I really dodged a bullet. And not being married to him this whole time and being his like second in command has really shown me that. It was a mistake. Even if I was, subjected to strong Retepsian pheromones, like, it was a mistake to ever be with this man because he's a giant baby.
Yes.
Speaking of, I mean, I know that we like to talk about jokes. Okay. I agree. Okay, let's get to the jokes, but I have to say, I agree with everything you guys said. Now let's get to the jokes. All right.
I got mine picked out. Hope it's not the same one.
It's like Ed. It's late. He's just like getting off of work.
So he ends up at Bortus's place, and they invite him in, Bortus and Clyden, because they just put their kid to bed, and they invite him in for a drink. And they pour him a glass of Jolie. What was it called again?
Opsada.
And it pours with the color and consistency of thin liquid mud. And Ed comments, if it looks like this going in, I wonder what it looks like coming out. And remind me again of what Bortus's line there is?
Oh, I think Clyden says it. He's like,
Clyden.
It's actually quite pleasurable. It creates a parasite or puts a parasite in the body of the drinker. And the subsequent growth and development of the parasite produce a pleasurable feeling from within the host. Which,
but before that, I love the line.
Oh.
It does not meant to come out.
Yes, that's great. That's great.
It's not meant to come out. I always forget the good ones.
But then anyway, so are you getting to them playing Latchcomb?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
What else do you do while you're drinking with buds but play board games? Or games. So Bortus or Clyden is like, let's play Latchcomb, and he's like, what's that? And he's like, I'll go get it and we'll show you. So the object of the game is they just throw it to each other.
Yeah, it's basically hot potato.
Yeah, which is like, okay, cool, that's great. And Ed's like, okay, so do we just like, he stops to ask, okay, do we just keep throwing this to each other? And just as he finishes his sentence, a blade shoots out of the egg and through his
Stabs,
hand.
yes.
And Bortus and Clyden yell, Latchcomb!
Yeah, and they're smiling. It is so freaking funny.
That entire scene, like as they're passing the egg back and forth, and just seeing Bortus and Clyden just beaming. They've got these huge dumb grins on their faces, like this is the most fun they've had.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, you won.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then it like cuts. Ed is shrieking, but then it cuts to Ed in his bed, his hands all wrapped up, and he's calling Kelly. So good.
I love that bit. And then does it come back later? Oh, well then later Mercer, his hand is all wrapped up, but he refuses to go to the doctor because he doesn't want to have to fill out a form admitting that he got the injury playing Latchcomb, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hilarious. So yeah.
Then it comes back a third time. Latchcomb does. When they're waiting for he's like, wow, what are we going to do for 11 days? And Bortus is like, shall I get the Latchcomb? yeah. And Ed's like, maybe we'll play Monopoly.
Yep.
So good.
So we usually talk about characters, but now we're kind of running out of characters. So we're going to talk about the costumes on the Orville. Obviously inspired, just like everything else, by Star Trek, mainly Star Trek TNG. Mm-hmm. Unlike, the costumes, again, we have to mention Star Trek Discovery. The costumes in Discovery are not terrible, so I'm not really going to criticize them. I do like the costumes on the Orville, but I'm not a huge fan of them. And I'm not sure if it's because I don't like the shoulder pads or what, or the zippers or what it is I don't like, but they're not as space agey as, for example, the design of the ship. So I don't give them a 10 out of 10. I give them kind of like a moderate. It seems like any Star Trek homage would have costumes equally as good or probably better than this. But Ian, what did you think? Or what do you think?
I kind of see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily know where the room for improvement there is. Like, I don't know what I would specifically change about them.
Right.
To make them better. I like the detail. I like, I don't know, like the texture that the fabrics have. Like, people put some thought into it. It doesn't look like any of this stuff is slapped together. Like, we talked about Isaac's costume many episodes ago, and how we thought that looked cheap and kind of slapped together. But these look... they're competent. I don't know. Like, I guess I'm not crazy about them either, but they don't distract me.
Right. Well, I think one thing I actually like about the Discovery costumes is the gold seems to have a metallic sort of foil material to them, whereas this, like the shoulder pads, they look like cheap plastic to me.
Okay.
And that's one thing I think that throws off the design for me. I don't know. G.I. Julie, do you have any thoughts?
I actually really like them. Initially, I thought they kind of looked like the uniforms from Enterprise, and then I looked up the uniforms from Enterprise, and I was like, nope, that's not it. Mm-hmm. The Enterprise costumes look like Sequest DSV costumes, and then I think it's Voyager that they look the most like, which is, well... not that they look the most like Voyager, but that they were the structure of the garments reminds me the most of the Voyager costumes. And by that I mean they look comfortable. Like they look like something that I would wear. Mm-hmm. And having a job that requires a uniform, I always dread that I'm not going to fit into the uniform. I've never, even like, at my smallest, I've never fit into structured, like extremely structured or tailored clothing, like pre-tailored clothing, because the proportions of my body are not normal, or not as normal as someone, say, who is like 80 pounds. So I just remember like scenes of like the start of this episode, for example, when Ed is just unzipping his jacket. It's very casual. It feels like a moto jacket, which I love the look of. And underneath, like, it exposes like a V-neck, which isn't too deep and it's not too crew. And it's exactly what I would imagine, or it's exactly the way that it falls, the colors, the structure. It accentuates different parts of the anatomy that are not distracting in any way. So I tend to really like them. Though the epaulets, is that what you call the shoulders?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they could have used some work. I don't know if the different colors denote anything or if they're supposed to denote anything. It doesn't seem as though in this show that they do. But yeah, it just seems like color is how you differentiate between the different officers and lieutenants. And
well, it's funny because one thing I know about the original Star Trek uniforms is that they were not primary colors, because Kirk's costume was always referred to as mustard, right? Then you had, you had your red shirts, you had your Spock and McCoy were not really in blue, they were in kind of a light blue, right? With the Next Generation, they switched the colors around for ranks and all that. And yes, the captain and first officer were in red, but again, Data and Geordi were in mustard. And then I believe the lower ranking officers were in blue. Am I right about that? I think. But one problem with the Orville is that if you notice, the Doctor is in, it looks like
green, solid.
I mean, is green a primary color? I guess it is in light, yes, but not in print.
It's a mix of two.
Yeah, but in print, you're right. It's a mix of two, but it's definitely solid green. It's not a shade of green. It's green, and Mercer and Kelly are in blue, like dark blue. And I think that's one thing that throws it off. Is I think more pastel-y colors or secondary shades of colors would look better. That's just my guess. I don't know. Maybe that's what's throwing it off. But it's obvious. Like I said, if you're gonna do a Star Trek homage, this is how you do it, right? They look like Star Trek uniforms. So yeah. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Is there anything else to say about this episode? I mean, again, a little convenient, right? Could have been longer, could have been developed more, but I did at least appreciate that they dealt with the subject matter, or at least attempted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this episode was fine.
Yeah.
It was fine. It was better than the last two. A little disappointing as a season finale.
Yeah, I think I'll say that. Yeah, the last three, unfortunately, have been sort of the weakest of the season, and I wonder if they purposely left them for the end so that they could start out strong, right? And get people kind of hooked, and then maybe just they push the weaker episodes to the end. I don't know.
And it's so funny too that the three of us think it's like the last three the weakest. Apparently, the way that this it wasn't like highly watched. But this is one of the episodes that's highly rated, and that critics, like more quote serious television critics,
not us.
So yeah, that's not us. They kind of took notice of this episode, and they're like, oh, okay, this show is like, it is pushing its boundaries, and it is doing what it's setting out to do, and we can't wait for season 2. Like, it was so highly lauded from critics.
It just goes to show that critics don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, if they spent a little more time just looking at the tiny holes, they would see. Not perfect. But I digress.
I'm glad that we've had a few episodes in a row that we can all say, these weren't the greatest. Because sometimes I think it comes across like we're just kind of Orville, cheerleaders here.
Yeah.
No,
just because so many of the early episodes were so good. And I'm just like, a few episodes into this podcast, like, are we ever going to say anything negative?
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea that if you're a true fan, you love every episode. No, we're still objective. I mean, because if you love everything, then you your opinion can't be taken seriously, right? Because you're not being objective. So I think it's important to recognize what episodes are weak and what aspects of the show are weak and what needs to be improved, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we all agree that as much as we love season 1, season 2 in some ways is actually better. So be sure to join us for the next 14 episodes of MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE, because we'll be reviewing season 2. And
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then we'll eventually get to season 3 in real time. It'll be fun. And you can find every episode of MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE at www.comicbooksyndicate.com or wherever else you have found us. Keep listening to us there if you like.
Yeah, just
like
search MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE,
Yep.
wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
There you go. And yes, like we said, we will be reviewing every single episode. So I want to thank G.I. Jolie and Champion for reviewing the entire first season with me. This has been a lot of fun.
It has. Thank you.
Yes, and we're going to keep doing it, like we said. So tune in very soon.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether you like it or not. Within a few days probably, or a week of the episode you're listening to right now, we're going to jump to season 2. So we'll see you all again very soon. And until then, there's more where that came from.